Hello and welcome again to Safety Short Series. Today we are going to talk about the 18th video of the series, and today's topic is lab and chemical safety. As the name suggests, we all are knowingly and unknowingly working with chemicals, and specifically when you're working in a lab, even though small portion, still you are exposed to a greater number of chemicals. Now, chemicals and chemical processes form a greater part of our lives, like cars, vehicles we drive, to what we eat, ways in which we relax, or we have grafted a large part of our lives around chemicals to make our lives easier, safer, and convenient. Now, chances are that your work brings you in contact with chemicals and chemical processes. Even a simple use of gas to cook food or getting your vehicles filled up, it transfers highly flammable chemicals from one container to another. Although the final product may be enormously beneficial, but by and large, chemicals can be dangerous and even deadly. Now, corrosive chemicals are mostly used in manufacturing of larger pharmaceuticals and other chemical processes, sometimes thus causes serious risk to health. And as dangerous they can cause rashes or even to death. Although they are dangerous, but still there are means and ways to handle them safely. Knowing them reduces the risk to a larger or a greater level. So let's start with knowing them. Okay, so to begin with, the route of entry. So basically, let us first try and understand that most common route of transmission in laboratory, which can lead to laboratory acquired infection. When we talk of acquiring an infection, so the very first aspect that you must know is the standard. So what is the standard that you must know? You should know the standard, the occupational exposure of hazardous chemical in laboratory standard, that is 29 CFR 1910-1450. Now, you can refer this standard and you'll get a lot of information about. But what we are primarily going to highlight here is, to begin with, we must first know when we are trying to tell people that, okay, it is unsafe, but how? So we must first try and explain route of entries. So what are route of entries? So route of entries are basically from where chemicals can enter our body. Now, unless and until you understand this, you'll not be able to give the right crux of information that is actually required for an individual to know that why we are talking about protecting them, or why protecting these parts are important. So the very first thing from where the chemical can enter your body is direct skin, eye, mucosal membrane, or exposed to the agent. Now, you must know that whatever is open part of our face, so chemicals can enter through our eyes, ears, so that is all mucosal membrane, right? Now, the second part, how it can enter, is parental, inoculation. That is use of syringe, or by any sharp object if your skin is getting punctured, or you have been bitten by some infectious animal, or you have been bitten by any infectious agent. Now, not even that, the third aspect, and much greater risk, comes when you are ingestion, when you have ingestion or something goes directly from your mouth. Now, what can go from your mouth? If your mouth is open, what will happen? The dust, the liquids, small insects, or maybe the flying, okay, everything can go inside your mouth. That is what we say, right? Usually, oh, keep your mouth shut, or else something will go inside your head. And last but not the least, by inhalation. Now, what do we inhale? Inhalation means whatever vapor is being generated by any chemical that goes inside your nose. So it goes to our sense of smell. Now, when it goes to sense of smell, our body normal process is what? It will process that, okay, something is coming, boss. So yes, so infectious aerosols can get into your body, vectors can get into your body, mosquitoes, ticks, all these things can be inhaled. So that is one route of entry that needs to be very well protected. Now that we know that these chemical can enter out our body, we must understand few procedure or ways that identify laboratory procedures of hazards, which may include what. Now that we know that, okay, from the picture, it is much clearer that yes, how things can enter our body, or what are the routes of entries. Mm. So we must understand that why, how it can come, how it is possible that from these sources it can come. If you're using sharp objects, the very first aspect, if you're using sharp objects, if you're using aerosol generating procedures, that means if you're mixing chemicals that will generate smoke or homogenization or flow of cryptometry or EG or sonification or vortexing. So all these procedures, they generate basically aerosols or pipetting. Correct. So these are the procedures how it can enter. Then volume of culture, when we talk of typical laboratory area, so volume of culture. So when it comes to laboratory use, there are active chemicals involved where they are kept in a petri dish, and all that petri dish, when you are handling it, so you have been exposed. Now you don't know, you sometimes you simply carry it open ended, and what happens? The entire bacterial content is flowing in air, because these are very small micro dense particles, so they all go in air, and then it can enter from ingestion, it can be inhaled, it can be skin absorbed, so anything can happen, right? So then and then chemical radionuclides, again active components, use of animals working on top bench or open benches. So we don't know what type of biosafety requirements are there when you're using active contents. Similarly, the disposal of infectious waste. So that is also part of it. So where to get the information is also important. And that is why the standard. So the standard that we are referring to is the occupational exposure to hazardous chemical in laboratory standard 29 CFR 19101450. Now, what does this standard typically say? I'll just give you a very brief on this. It has laid down, five major elements, and the elements are hazard identification, chemical hygiene plan, information and training, exposure monitoring, and medical consultation and examination. So these are basically the five major elements that form the laboratory or exposure of hazardous chemical standard. Now, it is very much important that you not only refer only from the laboratory prospect, but also from the chemical prospect of it. So chemical safety should also be part of the standard, and this chemical safety is already part of the standard, but you must refer chemical safety from the standard also, because it is much more clearly defined here. What does it say? So what are the standards that we are talking of? Firstly, we are talking about occupational exposure to hazardous chemical in laboratory standard, that is 29 CFR 19101450 dot 1450. Now the other standard is the hazard communication standard, that is 29 CFR 19101200. The personal protective equipment PPE standards, that is 29 CFR 1910132. The eye and face protection 29 CFR 1910133. The respiratory protection 134, the hand protection 138, and the control of hazardous energy, that is 147. Pertaining to electricity, it is mentioned in 29 CFR 1910 subpart S of electrical fire safety in portable fire extinguisher standards of 1910-1557. The slip, trip and fall is mentioned with 29 CFR 1910 substandard D. Walking, working, surface, subpart E, means of egress, and subpart of general environmental control. Now, each standard refers to refer or contribute to a chemical safety and a laboratory safety need, from which first is hazard communication. The standard for any chemical industry or chemical area or lab, it's must or most important that hazards of the area and which are present there, which type of hazard and chemical to be handled is to be communicated, and how it's done. You can refer GHS, that is Globally Harmonized Signage System. Now the communication, now to communicate it to a very quick and effective means by GSS, what are things to include? Now, in for effective communication, so there are many procedures best suited as GSS1, where one simply represent chemical impact with a picture and information of that picture to be available. Later, you must communicate through risk number. Higher the number, higher the risk. Finally, how to control the exposure and maybe use of equipment or procedure you must keep, while handling the chemical. And last but not the least, you must know how to store it and how to handle emergency related to that chemical. So in simple 4 to 5 steps, or common columns, you can define the communication system. Now coming to PPEs or personal protective equipment. Each area and chemical has specific demand of PP. There is nothing like standard, PPs. Mostly people ignore to do the risk behavior, mostly people ignore or do, risky behavior because PPE we provide are not well communicated to individuals. Day one, what is informed or instructed, same will follow. So when it comes to PPE along with material to be handled, PPE to be defined and placed. So whenever you want to handle the chemical by default, PPE is there. Not depending much on PPE, it's always better to have safer means of transfer or handle the chemical defined in the hierarchy of control. As the standards say, the first standard that came to highlight with highest rated of exposure were eye, hand and respiratory protection. Mostly while handling chemicals, these are the areas that causes most exposure. As we discussed in, when we talk about the exposure happened in and how it happens. So if you must try and understand the need for protection or define need for protection, it's important. It's very important. So we mostly talk about means of protection, but we forget that protection, or how we have defined it, you need, but why is to be explained. So like we said that, with 5 simple steps of communication, if it is improved to a level, that overall safety culture and the acceptance of PP comes. So that is where we actually need to work. Now, one of the most important standard we miss is the control of hazardous energy standard, that is 29 CFR 1910.1.147. Now, most people don't refer to this standard, but it's very important to understand hazardous energies during process, accidental release or hidden energies and sudden release from where it can happen. We see or take very very casual, but one must understand that when we say release of energy, it doesn't always means energy supplied to the equipment system, but also energy generated by processes and operation of the machine. Stored energy or generated energy due to process is required to be considered and to be well communicated and well designed. For its energy is present on its release, it will impact the individual working in that area. Lastly, pertaining to the electrical safety, that is 29 CFR 1910 subpart S of electricity, fire safety, portable standards, slip trip falls, so access and egress. Now these standards are basically general standards and lot of things and information are described, and mostly people are aware of these operations. Now, this concludes, and I hope we were able to give you information sufficient enough for chemical and laboratory safety that will help you to be safe in procedure and practices. Like I said, Safety Shot is a series focusing on small safety videos. Thank you all for your support. Keep liking and sharing, and do not forget to subscribe for our motivation. We'll keep on posting more such videos. Till then, be connected and stay safe.